In the next one, we go to number 3 here, the ancient city. And this one's about the 12 links of dependent origination, although it never gives the complete list. So you can look this up. I'll read through it, but it's going to be a little bit too fast for you to write down. But you can look this list up on the internet very easily. The first one is ignorance. The second one, mental formations. Then consciousness. Then name and form, kind of hyphenated together. Then the 6 senses. Then contact with objects. Then feelings. Then craving. Then clinging, attachment kinds of things, then becoming, it's like karma, and then birth, and then suffering. More specifically, aging and death are tied in there as a part of that. So that's the list. It gets a little bit complicated because it's not actually a linear list. It kind of circles around a little bit as a part of that. So you need to go into something a little bit deeper teachings in order to understand that. But in terms of the sutra here that we're looking at, the ancient city, before my enlightenment, while I was still a bodhisattva, this world had fallen into trouble. It does not understand the escape from this suffering headed by aging and death. So then the next paragraph, when there is birth, aging and death comes to be. Aging and death has birth as a condition. Then, monks, it occurred to me when that exists, what exists, that's suffering, does, when what exists, does birth come to be? Existence, clinging, craving, feeling, contact, the 6 sense bases, name and form. So he goes there starting with number 12, what exists, all the way back through number 4, but haven't gone all the way yet. By what is name and form conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is consciousness, there's 3, name and form comes to be. Name and form has consciousness as its condition. Then, monks, it occurred to me by then what exists does consciousness come to be, and so forth. And he goes through this, and I'm not going to read through all of this, but he talks about consciousness, name and form, the 6 sense bases, aging and death, no birth, and so forth. So eventually he goes through all of that with the exception of needing to infer ignorance in there. And then he gets down a little past halfway down the page here. There is no consciousness. Name and form does not come to be. So when we go back through the cycle backwards, eventually that's what happens. And then no name and form, consciousness does not come to be. And then he makes an interesting kind of a statement about these in the last paragraph on the page. Cessation of name and form comes with cessation of name and form comes cessation of consciousness. With cessation of consciousness comes cessation of name and form. Okay, one way and the other way. With the cessation of name and form, the cessation of the 6 sense bases. With the cessation of 6 sense bases, the cessation of contact. Such is the cessation of the whole mass of suffering. Does it remind you of anything? Heart Sutra, maybe? Going back and forth, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, and so forth. So there is some link there. And then at the top of page 69, cessation, cessation. Thus, monks, there arose my vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. Then suppose, monks, a man wandering through the forest would see an ancient path and the ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. He would follow it and would see an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds, and ramparts. A delightful place. And the man would inform the king. So he goes to the king and says, renovate that city, sire. Then the king or royal minister would renovate the city, and then later that would become successful and prosperous, well populated, filled with people, attained to growth and expansion. So too, monks, I saw the ancient path, the ancient road traveled by the perfectly enlightened ones of the past. It is just this noble eightfold path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. I followed that path, and doing so I have directly known aging and death, its origin, its cessation, the way of leading to its cessation. I have directly known birth, existence, clinging, craving, feeling, contact, the six sense bases, name and form, consciousness, volitional formations, and so we would have to add ignorance in there. Their origin, their cessation, the way leading to the cessation. Having directly known them, I have explained them to the monks, the nuns, the male lay followers, the female lay followers. This spiritual life, monks, has become successful and prosperous, extended, popular, widespread, and well proclaimed among devas and humans. So he's using this ancient city that was discovered as the metaphor for what he has discovered from those of the other Buddhas as a part of that. So let's go on to the next one, which is his decision to teach. So I considered this Dhamma to have attained this profound, hard to see, hard to understand. See, hard to understand, so that's in there. Peaceful and sublime, unattainable by merely reasoning, subtle to be experienced by the wise. But this population delights in attachment, takes delight in attachment, rejoices in attachment. It is hard for such a population to see this truth. Okay, so when we are all caught up in attachment, it's very hard to see what he's talking about here. If I were to teach the Dharma, others would not understand me. It will, from the verses that are in here, it will never be perceived by those who live in lust and hate. Those died in lust, wrapped in darkness, will never discern this abstruse Dharma, which goes against the worldly stream, subtle, deep, and difficult to see. Considering thus, my mind inclined to inaction rather than to teaching the Dharma. Then Brahma comes along, knew with this mind, the thought in mind, and considered, the world will be lost, the world will perish, since the mind of the Tathagata, the Arhat, the perfectly enlightened one, inclines to inaction rather than teaching the Dhamma. So then Brahma appears before him and says, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. Let the Sublime One teach the Dhamma. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are perishing through not hearing the Dharma. There will be those who will understand the Dharma. So he's convincing you got to go do this. Then on next page 21, I listened to the Brahma's pleading, and out of compassion for beings, I survived the world with the eye of a Buddha. I saw beings with little dust in their eyes and with much dust in their eyes, with keen faculties and with dull faculties, with good qualities and with bad qualities, easy to teach and hard to teach. And some who dwelling, seeing fear and blame in other world, just as in a pond, lotuses of lotuses. Some grow in the water without rising out of it, and some other lotuses grow in water and rise out of the water, stand clear, unwetted by it. Then I replied to the Brahma, Open for them are the doors of the deathless. Let those with ears now show their faith. So he's made the choice, made the decision to go on. On page 72, then the Brahma thought, the Blessed One has consented to my request. He thereupon departed at once. In 22, to whom should I first teach the Dharma? It occurred to me, Alara Kalama. So I suppose I taught the Dharma first to Alara Kalama. He will understand quickly. This was his first teacher, recall. Then the deities approached me and said, Venerable Sir, Alara Kalama died 7 days ago. I thought Alara Kalama's loss is a great one. If he had learned the Dhamma, he would have understood it quickly. It occurred next to me, suppose I taught the Dhamma first to Udaka Ramaputta, the second teacher. He will understand it quickly. Then deities approached me and said, Venerable Sir, Udaka Ramaputta died last night. I thought Uddaka Brahmaputra's loss is a great one. If he had heard this Dharma, he would have understood it quickly. And then he continues, it then occurred to me the monks of the group of 5 who attended upon me while I was engaged in my striving were very helpful. Suppose I taught the Dharma first to them. I set out to wander in stages to Varanasi, between Gaya and Bodhi, and the Ajivaka Upaka saw me on the road and said, friend, your faculties are clear, the color of your skin is pure and bright. Under whom have you gone forth, friend? Who is your teacher? Whose Dhamma do you profess? And I replied, and it gives a bunch of stanzas here, but just picking a few lines, I have no teacher. I am the teacher supreme. I alone am the perfectly enlightened one, whose fires are quenched and extinguished. The word Buddha means one who is awake, or the awakened one. I go now to set in motion the wheel of Dharma in the world that has become blind. I go to beat the drum of the deathless. And then skipping the next verse there, he says in Ajivaka Upaka said, may it be so, friend. Shaking his head, he took a path and departed, apparently inferring that he just didn't quite get it. So then he goes on, and he says, I eventually came to Varanasi, to Deer Park, and I approached the monks of the group of 5. The monks saw me coming, and they agreed among themselves, here comes the ascetic Gautama, who lives luxuriously. We should not pay homage to him, or rise up for him, or receive his bowl or outer robe, but a seat may be prepared for him. So we'll invite him back, but we're not going to go out of our way. If he likes, he may sit down. However, as I approached, the monks found themselves unable to keep their pact. One came out to meet me and took my bowl and outer robe. Another prepared a seat, and another set out water for my feet, and they addressed me by name as friend. Friend would be a term that would infer equals. Thereupon I told them, monks, do not address the Tathagata by name and as friend. The Tathagata is an Arhat, a perfectly enlightened one. Listen, monks, the deathless has been attained. I shall instruct you. I shall teach you the Dharma. And then the next paragraph, friend Gautama, by the conduct, the practice, and the performance of austerities that you undertook, you did not achieve any superhuman distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. You now live luxuriously. How could you have achieved any superhuman distinction in knowledge and in vision worthy of the noble ones? I told them, the Tathagata does not live luxuriously. The deathless has been attained from the home life into homelessness. And then he tells them a second time he's not living luxuriously, and a third time, and then he says, I asked them, monks, have you ever known me to speak like this before? No, venerable sir. They've changed the title, notice. It's not friend now, it's venerable sir. Listen, monks, I shall instruct you. I shall teach you the Dharma, practicing as you are instructed by realizing it for yourselves here and now. Through direct knowledge, you will soon enter and dwell in that supreme goal of holy life. And then on page 75, number 29, I was able to convince the monks. So then he taught them the first discourse, which is in the next one here down below. And then the monks of the group of 5, thus taught, attained enlightenment, nirvana. The knowledge and vision arose in them. The venerable, our liberation is unshakable. This is our last birth. Now there is no more, excuse me, no more renewed existence. Excuse me a second. So then number 5, the first discourse. So then this is his actual first teaching, which isn't in the above one, but is treated as a separate sutra. Thus I have heard, Blessed One was dwelling in Varanasi in Deer Park and addressing the monks of the 5 thus. Monks, These two extremes should not be followed by one who has gone forth into homelessness. What to? The pursuit of sensual happiness in sense pleasures, which is low, vulgar, the way of worldlings, ignoble, unbeneficial, and the pursuit of self-mortification, which is painful, ignoble, unbeneficial. So those two things, sensual pleasures on one hand, self-mortification on the other, the two extremes. Okay? And then the Tathagata has awakened to the middle way, which gives rise to vision, which gives rise to knowledge, which gives rise to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nirvana. And what, monks, is that noble way? It is this noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. This, monks, is what the middle way, that middle way awakened to by the Tathagata, which leads to peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, nirvana. So then it goes through the four. The first one is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. Union with what is displeasing is suffering, that is getting attached to things. Separation from what is pleasing is suffering. We lose things that we like. And not to get what one wants is suffering. So either getting things we don't want, not getting things that we do want, or losing things that we already have that we like. All of those things are considered as a part of that. In brief, the five aggregates are subject to clinging and suffering. So there's a list of all of the things that we're trying to overcome as a part of this. Number two, this, monks, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. So what causes this? It is this craving that leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. So we get caught up in the craving related to these things, and that's the cause of all of this. Now, in other places, he uses different explanations of that. Ignorance is a common one. Sometimes he talks about selfishness and the self and so forth, being caught up in our own being as ourself. In the third one, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the remainderless fading away, the cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-attachment. And then the fourth one, the noble truth of the way leading to cessation of suffering, the noble eightfold path. And so then each noble truth is to be fully understood, to be abandoned, and to be realized. And we talked about those before. Those are the three aspects there. Oh, there's four here in case. The fourth one is to be developed. Sorry about that. So four, to be understood, abandoned, realized, and developed in this one. So when my knowledge and vision of these Four Noble Truths as they really are was thoroughly purified, then I came to have awakened to this unsurpassed perfect enlightenment in this world. The knowledge and vision arose in me. Unshakable is the liberation in my mind. This is my last birth. Now there is no more renewed existence. The monks of the group of five delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And when the wheel of Dharma had been set in motion, the earth-dwelling devas raised a cry. This is the unsurpassed wheel of Dharma, has been set in motion by the Blessed One, which cannot be stopped by any ascetic or Brahma or Deva or Mara or Brahma or by anyone in the world. The devas of the realm of the four kings raised a cry. And goes through and talks a little bit about the various devas and their cry. And then the last paragraph, I'm on 78. Thus at that moment, at that instant, at that second, the cry spread as far as the Brahma world. And this 10,000-fold world system shook, quaked, and trembled, and an immeasurable great radiance surpassed the divine majesty of the devas appeared in the world. Then the Blessed One uttered this inspired utterance. Kandana has indeed understood. Kandana has indeed understood. In this way, the Venerable Kanyana acquired the name, and Anya Kanyana, who has understood, was his name. So he was one of the five. So in this story, only one of the five actually achieved enlightenment. In the previous story, all five of them achieved enlightenment at that time. So there are other things that we will come to, that he will talk about, that is related to all of these things in some of the other sutras that we will be taking a look at. But that gives us a good start and a pretty good idea of what the Buddha may have seen as how this all comes together, and the foundation of what it was that he had to teach.